the practice session for this module of Discovering Buddhism, a module on emptiness. So it's a 3-hour session. We'll do some meditation with some short breaks in between. We'll probably do, I don't know, 3 or 4 different sessions of meditation, maybe shorter even, maybe 5. We'll see. Just see what kind of feels natural in the flow of things. Um, yeah. So let's start with just generating positive motivation and then doing some placement meditation for a little while. And then mainly what we'll focus on as a basis for meditation today is 3 different verses. One from the Rice Seedling Sutra, um, one from, and then 2 from, well, 3 actually verses from Nagarjuna. But they're all verses you'll recognize immediately that we spent a lot of time talking about during the class sessions. And they're also all 3 on the self-assessment, which I just put together a few days ago, the self-assessment kind of questions, and Leah will send out uh, maybe today while we're meditating even. Um, anyway, she'll send out soon. So also by meditating on those verses, it kind of effectively prepares you for a large part of the final self-assessment. Um, and also, I mean, one intention of using these verses, usually when I use, verses in teaching, is so that to give you a resource to use in your daily kind of contemplation. Yeah, as you choose. Okay. Anyway, so get comfortable in your meditation posture. And I also I'll yeah, give you opportunity to ask questions several times throughout. Um, so just, yeah, if some questions arise, just keep them in mind yeah, until I mention. Okay, so get comfortable in your meditation posture. And gradually, yeah, gather your awareness within and check your state of mind. Kind of clear things, yeah, other kind of thoughts and responsibilities and other things you're trying to hold in mind. Kind of let those things go as much as you can for the time being. So then generating a positive motivation. Um, yeah, it's good to think. I mean, you can think in different ways. One thing, it's good to remember how, what an incredible, precious opportunity that we have, this human life, this one time in our rebirths in samsara. We've taken rebirth as a human to met the Buddhist teachings and taken some interest and have the ability to practice, and especially by reflecting on emptiness, independent arising and emptiness, as we're going to do today, then we can create a very powerful cause to, um, a very powerful antidote, or to generate a more and more powerful antidote to our afflictive emotions that not only suppresses, or not only kind of diffuses the afflictive emotion, no, different afflictive emotions, but especially as the antidote, realization of emptiness is the antidote to all the afflictive emotions. And it's only by deeper and deeper realization of emptiness that we can ultimately even destroy not only the very roots of disturbing emotions in our minds, but also the seeds of those and even the subtle imprints of those, and thereby bring a lasting peace and happiness and even omniscience. Uh, develop those in our continuum. So, on one hand, we can think, may I make one way of making the most, taking the essence of this life, making it most meaningful, is to, learn and practice hearing, contemplation, meditation on emptiness, just for one's own purposes. But then, especially, it's important to try to generate a Mahayana motivation that's concerned not only for our own well being, but for the well being of countless other sentient beings who've been kind to us from life to life, or the basis of our own potential possibility for generating, for achieving full enlightenment. Because only by generating great compassion for all sentient beings, cherishing each and every one of them, like a mother cherishes her only child, that we can eventually become enlightened. But not only, I mean, not primarily that, but primarily also because each and every other sentient being is the same as us and wishing to have well-being and happiness, wishing to be free from suffering. And the most meaningful way we can use our own lives and to bring the greatest possible benefit is to generate a caring attitude about each and every other sentient being, and genuinely motivate every action we engage in with a wish to, to benefit countless others, and thereby overcome, completely unmixed with a selfish attitude. So it's excellent if today, and as we meditate on emptiness, we can do so, undependent arising and emptiness, that we can do so with a pure, altruistic motivation, and not only the wish to benefit other sentient beings in a superficial or short-term way, but with the wish to bring them, the infinite benefit of liberation from samsara and full enlightenment. And thereby also, we do, by acting in such a way, we make the best offering to the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, and it's the best way of repaying the kindness of our own teachers. And it's what's most pleasing to all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and our own teachers. So it's another way to motivate. So in whatever way it's most powerful for your own mind, generate a virtuous motivation for the session. Mhm. Especially it's excellent if you can think, generate a bodhicitta motivation, thinking in order to free the numberless sentient beings from the suffering of samsara and the countless other human beings that we can see suffering in countless ways. In order to free all of them from suffering by meditating on the antidote to the very root of all suffering, the emptiness, and meditating on wisdom, realizing emptiness, which is the antidote to the ignorance, which is the root of all suffering. Then may I free all the suffering human beings and all the animals suffering from hot and cold, hunger and thirst, and the fear of being eaten, and then living such short lives, taking rebirth, mating and dying again and again. And then all the hungry ghosts suffering from extreme hunger, weakness for very long periods of time, unable to find even the slightest food or drink for years and years and years and years. Then the suffering of the hell beings of the hot hells and cold hells. So in order to free all of them from suffering, and then the suffering even of the gods and demigods, also taking rebirth through the force of karma, and then dying away from incredibly kind of blissful state. It said when the gods, those in the god realms, when they just in the week before they die, they can, through their clairvoyance, they can see that their death is approaching about a week before they pass away. And that since they've spent, like many, many years, very long time as a god in this incredibly kind of privileged state of existence where there's no painful feelings of body or mind. It's like they kind of forgot that they're still in samsara and that that's only a temporary state of existence. But then, about a week before they die, through their clairvoyance, they see that their death is approaching. It said the radiance of their bodies fade, and they start to have an unpleasant smell of their body. Even like human beings do as they're coming very close to death. And then their flower garlands wilt, and other gods then they shun them. They keep them at a distance. They don't want to be around them anymore. And so then these gods, seeing that they're about to fall from this incredibly privileged state of existence, as said also they can see, because it requires incredible amount of merit and virtuous karma. It uses up an enormous quantity of virtuous karma to live and abide in a god realm. And while they're there, mostly, they just kind of take it for granted, so they don't do especially virtuous things, right? Because they don't have much suffering, so they don't feel very compelled. And there's nobody else they see around them who's suffering, right? So they don't feel very compelled to engage in much virtue. So they use up, you know, enormous stores of their virtuous karma, and then as they're dying away from that realm, they can see that they're gonna then the most powerful karmas left in their mind primarily are non-virtuous karmas. So then with the clairvoyance, they can see that they're going to fall from the God realm into like rebirth as a hell being or an animal or a hungry ghost. And compared to that realm, even rebirth as a human looks terrible, right? Um, so it's said that they experience, even those in the God realm, we think, oh, they probably don't have much suffering, so it's a bit difficult to generate compassion for them. But then, especially if you think what it's like to fall out of the God realm. For this week before, it said that's some of the most intense suffering in samsara, is these beings that are about to die away from the God realm and take rebirth in a lower rebirth, especially. They have incredible mental suffering. Mm. It's kind of similar to some people. Sometimes you hear of really like very wealthy investors, especially people in the financial kind of market field. like hedge fund managers or something that are billionaires or multimillionaires. And then the stock market crashes and they lose immense amount of value, very short time. Then some they can't bear it and then they commit suicide. Well, something similar. Anyway, so generating compassion as a motivation for meditating on emptiness, compassion for all these countless sentient beings suffering in the oceans of samsaric suffering. Mm. So then with the virtuous motivation, then let's practice placement meditation for about 10 minutes. Just focusing your mind on a chosen object of meditation, either sensations of breath, breathing, or the nature of your mind, or a visualized object, whatever you like. So for about 10 minutes, just practice placement meditation, remembering to apply the mental factors of mindfulness and introspection, and to be aware of the obstacles of laxity and excitement, and especially try to um, cultivate the qualities of attention, of stability, and clarity. Mm. So then we'll turn our attention to this, well, to dependent arising, to this verse from the Rice Ceiling Sutra first, where the Buddha says, Venerable Bhikshus, whoever sees dependent and relative origination sees the Dharma. Whoever sees the Dharma sees the Buddha. What is this dependent and relative origination of which I speak? It is this, because this exists, that arises. Because that is born, this is born. And then in this sutra, the Buddha goes on to explain the 12 links of dependent arising, the wheel of life. Um, but this is the most commonly quoted sutra where the Buddha explains dependent arising. And there's many others, of course, but yeah. So with the sutra as a basis, then we'll recall that there's three main kinds of dependent origination. So we'll meditate on each of those sequentially. The first, what it explicitly mentions here, is in relation to impermanent phenomena or functioning things, that they depend upon causes and conditions. So at the end where he says, because this exists, that arises. I mean, that's kind of general, right? But because that is born, this is born. It's specifically referring to causation, how, for example, because there's a seed and soil, moisture and sunlight, then a sprout grows. And then if the sprout, is not harmed by anything else and then keeps receiving sunlight, water, then it grows, branches, leaves, flowers, fruits, so forth. So like that, all impermanent phenomena um, are continually changing moment by moment, and they're changing in dependence upon causes and conditions and impermanent phenomena that didn't exist before, like an apple. Um, like think the apples that will grow next autumn, they don't exist now, but between now and then, certain conditions, causes and conditions to come together that they grow. And so they come into existence. So the idea that things come into existence and then as they exist, they change in accordance with the way they're affected by causes and conditions. Mm. So why don't we actually, to begin with, just in the present moment, just go back to the state of attention and focused attention that you just um, had before I started speaking. And then just observe impermanence in your own experience in the present moment. Maybe, Leah, there's people at the door. Maybe could you explain what's going on to them? Yeah, so go back to whatever you're, when we were doing placement meditation, whatever you're focusing on. And then as you continue to focus on that object with a part of your mind, be aware of impermanence in your own experience, in your mind, and your experience in the present moment. Try to be aware of change as it appears in your mind and the change in your quality of attention, or the focus of your attention, or the way you're aware of the object. And then also as it appears in other ways, sounds that appear to your ear consciousness, sensations in the body that arise just spontaneously, thoughts or memories that arise. So yeah, while remain focused on your object of meditation, of placement meditation, try to be at the same time aware of impermanence, the momentary disintegration of phenomena. Mm. And then gradually expand your awareness of the impermanent nature of things, of phenomena, functioning things outwards. Can, consider, is it the case that all the things that appear to your sense consciousness in the present moment, in the room where you are, that they're all continually changing moment by moment. And kind of expand your awareness beyond what's immediately appearing to your sense consciousness. And also especially be aware of, things that appear to your eyes and sounds, physical sensations, smells, tastes. Is it the case that they're all changing continually, moment by moment? The objects that appear to the consciousness are changing. The sense organs that enable those consciousness to arise are changing. And then the consciousness, those different consciousness, the eye consciousness, the ear consciousness, and so forth, themselves are also changing moment by moment. So is that the case? Try to get some sense of that. And then expand your awareness of impermanence of especially of the material world initially, out further and further. Can help to reflect on, use an analogy like think of the ocean, the waves on the ocean, or the sounds, things that obviously appear to be changing continually. And then reflect how all things in the physical world are like that. The entire planet, solar system, our galaxy, all the other galaxies in the present, in the distant past, in the future. You could think of, countless different ways, all different things of the physical world, and how they're all changing continually. Mm. And gradually bring your meditation to a conclusion. Just recalling, yeah, in this session, we meditated on generating positive motivation, and then did some placement meditation for a while, just to generate focused attention. And then read briefly this verse from the Rice Seedling Sutra, and then meditated on impermanence for a while as a kind of gateway to contemplating the different types of dependent origination, dependence upon causes and conditions, dependence upon parts, and dependence upon mental imputation. Mm. So let's take a 10-minute break, or a 9-minute break until 4 o'clock. Okay, let's continue. Mm. Yeah, so just kind of return to the what you were focusing. Well, return to the object of placement meditation for a minute or two. That's probably best. Whatever you were focusing on when we were doing placement meditation at the beginning. Return to that and focus on that for a couple minutes. Mm. And then again, I'll look at impermanence a little bit more briefly. This time, instead of focusing on the impermanence of material things, a matter, the physical world, then focus on the mind. Again, we were already observing the impermanence of our own minds before, but just try to, again, expand that awareness out, beginning with awareness of the impermanence of one's own mind and mental experience, including also this, experience of the sense consciousness, 5 sense consciousnesses, and the mental consciousness. But then in your imagination, expand your awareness out to consider the impermanence of the minds of others more and more, other human beings, other animals, other types of beings who are nearby and then more and more distant. And that way just reflect on the impermanent nature, yeah, of the minds gradually of all beings, all sentient beings, all enlightened beings. Mm. And then reflect um, on cause and effect. So again, come back to the present moment and your object of placement meditation. Mm. Then I'd suggest look in order to get some sense. a deeper sense of the cause and effect. Choose, any object. Start with the physical object, it's probably easier. Either your body or, the laptop screen or the table or the chair or you're sitting on or whatever, any physical object. And just imagine the process of causation, kind of trace back in time the process of causes and conditions that gave rise to that object as it exists in the present moment. And kind of imagine the whole pathway of the production of that object unfolding. Causes giving rise to effects, which themselves are causes for subsequent effects, and so on and so on. Yeah, so try that for a few minutes, imagining the causal pathways of different objects, physical objects. Mm. And then shift your focus to looking at causation as it unfolds in your mind. So if, yeah, if you like, just look in the present moment. As the mind changes in the present moment, we can observe and see how different thoughts, feelings arise. And then taking those as objects, kind of imagine the causal chain that gave rise to them. So we can, yeah, look into the past and remember or imagine different causes and conditions that give rise to different, yeah, thoughts and feelings, perceptions arising in the present moment. Mm. Then let's turn our attention to the second kind of dependent arising, dependence upon parts. And we can stick with the mind since we're already looking at the mind and just consider how, yeah, our own consciousness is made up of, is made up of moments in time, like any conscious experience we have is made up of moments in time, which are parts of it. And then also, for those familiar with main mind and mental factors, any conscious experience has both those elements, a main mind and mental factor. that are congruent with each other. Mm. So one way we can approach this is to think, is there any, thought or emotion or mental experience I have or others have that's not made up of parts? So consider that for a few minutes. Mm. And then in the same way, look at physical phenomena. You can start with your own body, if you like, in the present moment, and look how it's made up of parts. And then gradually look at other physical phenomena, those immediately around you, those more distant, or whatever way you want to organize. And look at how they're made up of parts in different ways. Physical parts mainly. Of course, they also exist through time, have moments in time, but they also have physical parts, smaller and smaller, the molecules and atoms, the subatomic particles. And again, we can ask the question, is there any physical object that's not made up of parts? Even dependent upon parts, right? Also, like you can think of like waves in the ocean. The waves aren't, it's like energy moving through a field of matter, or sound waves, or light waves. but they're dependent upon uh, physical parts, molecules. Mm. And then finally reflect on the third type of dependent arising, mental imputation, how things exist in dependence upon mental imputation. This is the most difficult, the most subtle. Well, yeah, the most difficult, but maybe mm, mm, take some different, maybe before we relate to the person, to ourselves as a person, take some different objects, like, your laptop or your phone, or, a table or a chair, or a reflection even. Anyway, whatever object appeals to you. And try to observe how, yeah, that object is something imputed upon its parts. Right? So how the object, whatever object you take to mind, that has, it's composed of a collection of parts, and how that object is something that exists by being mentally imputed upon those parts. But within the collection of parts, it's completely unfindable. If you search for that object, it's none of the parts. And it doesn't exist as something separate from the parts. And yet it exists as something mentally imputed upon the parts. So in that way, or there are other ways too, then yeah, try to reflect on this type of dependent arising of being mentally imputed, existing in dependence upon mental imputation. I'll give another example in just a few minutes, but try working with that first. Mm. Another example of, yeah, we can reflect on to get an idea of dependence upon mental imputation is like this meditation session, for example. We're all participating in this, what was it, this 3 hour long kind of practice session of discovering Buddhism, module on emptiness, wisdom of emptiness. Yeah, so let's say this practice session, but like the practice session is something that exists merely in dependence upon mental imputation. It has a whole collection of parts. There's each of us, the participants. It has a kind of framework, from a timing 3 to 6. And then there's like a Zoom room and the in-person kind of room we're in, the Gompa. Those are kind of parts of the session. And then there's instruction, and then there's, activity. Each of us making some effort. If we were all just like chatting with each other, that wouldn't be really a valid basis for imputing a meditation session or practice session. But because there's an activity that's appropriate to be labeled meditation. So that session, like this meditation session or this practice session, it's something that exists. But if you search for it within all the parts, you can't find anything that you can precisely point to and say, this is the practice session. You just find different things that are parts of the practice session, and then it's something imputed upon those parts. So see if that helps to clarify for your mind. So you can use that or other examples. Examine how things exist in dependence upon concepts and mental imputation and naming. So gradually relax your attention and review what you contemplated on. We'll take a short break. So we began with continuing to meditate on impermanence and then looked at the causation, dependence upon causes and conditions in relation to physical things, and then consciousness. And then we looked at dependence upon parts in relation to consciousness and then physical things. And then we spent a little while looking at dependence upon mental imputation. Mm. So now let's take a break until 4:45. Till 4:45. Take a break. Okay. So let's continue. There was a question in the chat. So I'll just answer that quickly. About the Heart Sutra, where it says there's no attainments. What are we doing then? There's no attainments. Let's see. Yeah, here it is. Similarly, so this is the Heart Sutra. It says similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. You have to remember there when all those with the list of no, 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 no. It doesn't mean those things don't exist. You have to it all have to look above, um, where it defines what what is being negated. Yeah, here it is. So here's where, let's see. Shariputra asked a question about Avalokiteshvara. How should any son of the daughter of lineage trained who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom? And then here Avalokiteshvara begins his answer to Shariputra, and this is the main body of the sutra, right? So in the first, at the very beginning of his answer, Avalokiteshvara says, Shariputra, any son of lineage or daughter of lineage who wishes to practice this activity of the profound perfection of wisdom should look upon it like this. Okay, so how to look upon it? Means look upon all things correctly and repeatedly. So that's what we're doing. We're repeatedly beholding those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. So that's the essential part. That's what's being negated. What's being negated is empty of inherent nature. He's saying, look upon those five aggregates also as empty of what? Empty of inherent nature. So what it's saying is those and then it goes on to list those five aggregates and say each of them they do not exist. But what it means is they do not have inherent existence. So that's what it says when it says form is empty. It doesn't mean form doesn't exist. You could as well say there's no form. But what it means is there's no inherently existent form. Form is empty of inherent existence. And then it says in the same way, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, consciousness. And then, yeah, and so then when it starts listing here, no eye, it means no inherently existent eye. No ear means no inherently existent ear. So you attach that predicate, inherent nature, has no inherent nature, no inherent existence to all of the no's. So when it says no attainment, it doesn't mean there's no attainments at all. It means there's no attainments that exist independently from their own side, because attainments are the results of causes and conditions. So they exist dependently, right? As the result of causes and conditions. They also have parts. It's something we mentally impute upon. I mean, what is an attainment? Really, it's an experience that a person has, right? And then upon that, we impute, oh, attainment. Like if we have a sudden insight into emptiness, while we're meditating, then, that's an experience with many different parts in time. It also has a feeling, a feeling of maybe joy or fear. There's also a recognition, more kind of intellectual like understanding. And so there's all different parts of an attainment, right? But on that whole experience, we label, oh, attainment, right? Right. Yeah. So like that. That's what it means. There's no attainment. Any other questions, right, before we continue? None of you look in a very questioning mood. Okay, then let's continue.
Question, Geshe, I have a question.
Sure.
It's about when we have just before we have grasping on the idea, for example, of emptiness. There is something that we see, we recognize, like we know it, we knew it's there, but we recognize it. And just before that, we grasp on the idea, on the conceptualization. Is it? Can we say that this is the like empty of, like instead of saying like empty of inherent existence, we say empty of grasping idea to it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty similar. That'd be
Okay.
quite similar. I'm not sure if it's exactly the same, but um yeah, I mean the what we're saying things are empty of, when we say empty of inherent existence, it definitely I mean to us or to an ordinary person, everything that appears to their mind appears as if it exists from its own side, right? So
Yes.
like, when we were just in the last at the end of the last meditation session, when I was asking you to try to see how things exist independence upon imputation, right? And I was using the example of a laptop, like just because I'm looking at a laptop while I'm meditating, right? Because you're all there. Um, um, but like like the example of a laptop, like okay, it has a keyboard, it has a touchpad. Like the keyboard's not the laptop. It has a touchpad. That's not the laptop. Underneath, there's a you know what do you say? The transistors and the internal parts of it, the processor. There's a fan, a battery. There are electric signals, flowing through the laptop. There's a screen with the light being projected. Then there's a cover, the case. There's all different parts, right? None of those is a laptop, but on that thing, then you can impute a laptop, right? But the way it ordinarily appears to our mind, and this is the way everything ordinarily appears to our mind, is not as if the laptop is something I just impute upon this collection of parts that function in this way, but as if it is a laptop from its own side, right? From the
Yes.
side of the object. And so when we think about emptiness, what we're trying to negate is that, and we habitually grasp at things existing from their own side. When I see a chair, I habitually grasp at being chair from its own side. Is he good or bad? Everything that appears to our mind, there is a big element of this habitually grasping at the thing being what I perceive it to be from the side of the object, completely apart from projection from the side of the mind or labeling from the side of the mind. So yes, when we kind of get some insight into the emptiness of phenomena, that is an element of empty of what we're grasping it as being, right?
Mhm.
Like
Exactly.
there just is being, even being is like a label, right? We put it's kind of like we can't really experience the world in a way outside of our labels, but that's what we're trying to do. And maybe it's a bit too heavy to say we can't because I think we can actually. But that's one reason it's said, when we eventually develop a direct perception of emptiness, a non-conceptual awareness,
Hmm.
understanding of emptiness, the experience of that is beyond words,
Yes.
as is the many kinds of experiences, but that especially, it's completely kind of beyond concepts, beyond words. But it's helpful to think about other experiences that we have that, yeah, even we try to explain it to someone, or we even try to think of it. It's whatever thoughts we have, whatever words we can use to express it, it doesn't really get it can't really express the experience. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, Victoria?
Geshe, just a quick question to double confirm. In the readings, there was an article by Lama Thupten Yoshe on non-duality, right?
Mhm.
So are we talking here about the the duality, meaning the perception of the conventional reality, conventionally versus ultimately? Is that the kind of duality we are talking here about?
Well, I'm not sure because I don't remember exactly that article and what Lamyesha was talking about. Then there are different types of non-duality, but definitely that is one, the one you described. the conventional reality or conventional truth or conventional nature, you can say, and ultimate nature. And those two, when we meditate on emptiness, yeah, in a way, we're trying to perceive how those two are non-dual. Because, like the emptiness of something, it can't exist without the I mean, the emptiness, something's emptiness of independent existence is its ultimate nature, right? So whenever we say ultimate truth, ultimate nature, ultimate reality, it's talking about that fact of things, that they're empty of existing from their own side. Emptiness. Like emptiness and ultimate reality are synonyms, right? But the emptiness of something cannot exist without the conventional thing, just that ordinary thing. Like if you take like a mouse, or my laptop, because you can see my laptop because you're looking at from that camera, right?
Yeah.
Like my laptop, there's an emptiness of inherent existence of the laptop, right?
Hmm.
But that exists independence upon the laptop. The laptop itself is a conventional truth, conventional reality. And us as a person, like as a person, the ordinary person is a conventional reality. It appears just, to ordinary consciousness, right? But then we're empty of inherent existence. That's our ultimate reality. Um, and that exists in dependence upon the person, us as a person existing,
Hmm.
you know,
So would
and vice
non-duality?
versa. Also, the conventional reality depends upon it being empty of inherent existence because that's empty. That emptiness of inherent existence is what enables things to interact, right? If
Mhm.
things existed from their own side, then they couldn't affect other things and they couldn't be affected by other things. So they couldn't be produced in dependence upon cause and conditions. They couldn't exist in dependence upon parts and they couldn't exist in dependence upon mental mutation. They would have to have their own completely independent kind of existence, which they don't.
So the non-duality would be the accepting of both views and kind of meeting in the middle. Is that is that
It's
how
not
you?
really the accepting of both views or meeting in the middle. It's just the fact that both are kind of like two sides of the same coin and the perception of that. Like Lama Tsongkhapa has a famous line in the Three Principal Aspects of the Path in one verse where he says, if you see sort of it's like if you see the conventional nature of things and their emptiness of inherent existence as two separate things, then you still haven't understood the truth. The reality is that those two are completely intermixed, like milk and water, right? They're inextricably related to each other. And so, one, when we have the correct understanding of emptiness, then, when we observe conventional reality, it immediately brings to mind that, well, for things to exist conventionally, they must be empty of inherent existence. And when we bring to mind inherent existence, that should immediately bring to mind that that emptiness itself depends upon a conventional reality. So that those two understandings occur without kind of alteration and without having to turn our mind one way and then the other way. We see them as part of the same kind of reality.
Thank you so much.
Unified.
This is very clear. Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah. Okay, let's continue now. We only have an hour left. We'll take another break. I think we'll do two short sessions. Um, so now we'll turn to this next verse that I wanted to meditate on with you, which is, oh yeah, this one. Exactly, here we are. Remember, we spent a lot of time on this verse by Nagarjuna from the Fundamental Wisdom of the Middle Way. It says, by exhausting, there's a lot to meditate on here, but we'll just kind of go through several steps kind of quickly. The steps basically are kind of sketched across the top of the slide. And where he says, by exhausting karma and afflictive emotions, one is liberated from samsara, right? So bringing karma and our afflictive emotions to an end, then we're liberated from samsara. And then, but how do we do that? Karma and we have to understand how they arise. Karma and afflictive emotions come from false concepts. So this is, the dependence upon causes, right? We have false concepts that those give rise to afflictive emotions as causes, and then those afflictive emotions give rise, causes to engage in karmic actions. Um, and then he says those come from elaboration, meaning those false concepts come from elaboration. And elaboration means kind of like grasping at inherent existence, right? As for elaboration, it is ceased by emptiness or ceased in emptiness. So we'll meditate with beginning with karma and then going backwards to afflictive emotions, then to false concepts, and then to the elaboration of inherent existence, which is kind of like ignorance. That's the root of samsara. To check if that's, what we think about that. Is that actually the way things arise? So, yeah, just focus your mind within for a couple minutes first, then do some placement meditation or, yeah, focus however you like. Mm. So then begin by bringing to mind some non-virtuous karmas you've created. I mean, yeah, this process is the same. It's true for both virtuous and non-virtuous karma, but it's a bit easier to see with regard to non-virtuous karmas. So think of some non-virtuous instances of non-virtuous karma you've created, like killing, stealing, lying, um, slander, harsh speech, or so forth, or even mental karma of covetousness or malice. So try to think of at least, one or two or a few clear examples of a non-virtuous action you've engaged in and thereby created non-virtuous karma. Actions of body, speech, or mind. Mhm. And then consider, is it true that those karmas that they arose that you created them through the force of afflictive emotions arising in your mind? So try to remember clearly, as clearly as you can, kind of the time that you engaged in those non-virtuous actions, and especially the time just before, like what was arising in your mind that compelled you to engage in those actions, and were afflictive emotions, disturbing emotions like anger or resentment or um, attachment or jealousy or something, selfish concern. Oh, well, let's just stick with the kind of attachment or anger or other related afflictive emotions. Were they involved in a significant way in compelling you to engage in those non-virtuous actions? Mm. And then, did those um, afflictive emotions arise from false concepts or false conceptions? So it says here. So here, false conceptions, to remind you again, is usually it's like this, you know. Think if we think, well, anger or attachment, how they're preceded by. Remember, anger focuses exclusively on um, something that appears unpleasant or negative or repulsive or bad about the object of anger, right? And then exaggerates that. So the like a false concept that would precede anger is the perception of, something that later becomes the object of our anger, but the perception of that as bad or something, unpleasant, repulsive about it, and grasping at that perception as being exclusively from the side of the object actually being like that, completely independent of our own perception, right? So the object being kind of bad, unpleasant, repulsive from its own side, completely independent of our own perception. And then with attachment, it's, the similar thing, it's just instead of pleasant, instead of unpleasant, pleasant, right? So it's this kind of, so the false perceptions, concepts here, largely, I mean, there's different kinds, but it's largely this kind of thinking that things exist as we perceive them independently, apart from our perception, and believing that to be the case, right? So check again with these your own examples of non-virtuous actions to see if they were, yeah, you were kind of compelled to engage in them through afflictive emotions. And then those specific afflictive emotions, try to look clearly and see if they were preceded by kind of false concepts about yourself or about others or about, whatever the objects of your afflictive emotions were. Try to check that. Mm. And then check also that if those afflictive emotions that you're looking at, if they arose, and the false conceptions, you can also think that they're both involved, are they both involved with selfish concern? Meaning concern primarily for what? For oneself, at the expense of concern for others. And selfish concern doesn't have to be oneself alone as an individual, it can also be concern for also me and mine, those that you associate closely with. Could be your own, family, your friends, your own group or tribe or country, something like that. Usually it's for ourselves individually, but can be broader. But see if there's a degree of selfish, self-centered concern or self-cherishing that is like underlying and is a precursor to these false concepts and afflictive emotions and karma. Mm. And then finally, check if this selfish concern and false conceptions, did they seem to arise from what here is what's called elaboration of inherent existence, but what it means is a perception of one's self as a person existing from its own side, independently of causes and conditions, independently or without depending upon parts or mental limitation, just having its own real, concrete kind of entity. And also the objects of your afflictive emotions, the other people or things towards which you generated false concepts or afflictive emotions. That they similarly seem to exist just from their own side. So does it seem that false concepts and afflictive emotions kind of arose from or in relation to this kind of elaboration? So check that for a few minutes. Mm. So then relax your attention there. I'll take another short break. But just, yeah, review. The steps of that one are quite straightforward. But yeah, we started with looking at karma, some kind of negative karma, non-virtuous karma we created. Then checked if it's the case that arose from afflictive emotions. Did those arise from false conceptions? And were those two involved with selfish or self-centered attitude? And then did that arise or was underpinned by elaboration, grasping at self and others and other things as existing from their own side, independent, having an independent kind of concrete reality. Mm. So after the break, then we'll do the 4-point analysis on the selflessness of persons. So anyway, let's take a break until mm, yeah 5:30. We'll resume at 5:30. Okay, let's start again. Okay, we're going to meditate on emptiness now. Get ready. Okay, so let's mm, start with a little placement meditation again. Oops. Mm. So to kind of pick up where we left off, we were meditating on this verse. that says, by exhausting karma and afflictive emotions, one is liberated. Karma and afflictive emotions come from false conceptions. And those false conceptions come from elaboration of an inherent existence. Remember, so we ended with reflecting whether or not, that it seems like in our own experience that when we have afflictive emotions, they come from false conceptions, grasping at things being, good or bad, pleasant or unpleasant, attractive or unattractive, grasping in that being kind of an inherent reality of the things we observe, as they observe them from their own side. And whether, we seem to exist, if that arises also from selfish concern, and that there seems to be, whether there's a self that perceives good and bad and pleasant and unpleasant and grasps and repels things, is attracted to some, repelled, revulsed by others. And if that self seems to exist from its own side, have its own independent concrete reality. Mm. So then it says, as for elaboration, this kind of grasping at things existing from their own side, is ceased by emptiness or ceased in emptiness. So now we'll meditate on emptiness. As a way of generating the antidote to this strong grasping at a self that exists completely disconnected with and unconnected with others and other things. As a solid reality, and also as an antidote to, our perception of other, objects of our attachment and anger and other afflictive emotions as having their own independent reality. So as a way of dissolving or ceasing these false concepts. So we'll meditate on emptiness, and to meditate on emptiness, we'll use this verse by Nagarjuna that we used before, or two verses actually. Here, these two. So here Nagarjuna quite nicely, succinctly, although it's not entirely clear, but lays out how to meditate on the selflessness of person. Says that a person is not earth. Basically, he goes through the list of the parts of the person and says the person is not any one of those parts. It's not the entire collection of those parts. There's also not something other than those parts. So then how does the person exist? He basically is saying it's empty of existing from its own side. Because if the person existed from its own side, when we search for it, we should be able to find it. So he says a person is not earth, not water, not fire, not wind, not space. And here he's talking about, the parts of the person, right? There's an earth element that's part of us, our bones and teeth and hair. Not the water. The water element is all the liquids within our body. Not fire. Fire is the heat and the kind of combustion and transformation within our body. Not wind. Wind is the movement and the physical movement and the movement of like subtle energy within the body. not space. Space is the empty space within our body, not consciousness. Of course, consciousness is all of our mind, different aspects of our mind, or instances, types of minds. So a person is not any of those. And then he says, and not all of them together. What person other than these, if you look separately from these, what is there you can point to and say, this is I, the person? And then he kind of reinforces that and then moves on to meditation on selflessness of phenomena. Says, just as a person is not real due to being a composite of six constituents. So he's saying the person is not real, does not exist from their own side or inherently exist because it's a composite of these six constituents: earth, water, fire, wind, space, space and consciousness. Right? Because it's in a sense, in essence, he's saying because the person is made up of a collection of parts and is something imputed upon that collection of parts. Therefore, it doesn't have real or inherent existence. Mm. So now we'll meditate in accordance with that verse on these mainly four points. So the first is what is to be refuted, or recognizing the object of negation. Mm. So to do this, we can begin, in the last meditation, we're looking at afflictive emotions that we experience that give rise to and have compelled us to engage in non-virtuous actions. So one way to get a sense of how we ordinarily perceive ourselves is to try to vividly recall those or other afflictive emotions: anger, attachment, jealousy, depression, even, and try to kind of imagine being in the throes of that emotion again. And with the corner of the mind, observe, your attention inwards and observe how the I, the person who's experiencing that afflictive emotion in their continuum, how the I, the person, seems to exist. In that moment, do I seem to be something composed of many parts, be produced by causes and conditions, and be something imputed upon the collection of my parts? Or does it just seem like there's a kind of real, solid, independent kind of entity that I call I, and I believe to be exist just as it appears? So try, that for a few minutes, observing how we ordinarily, or how the self appears strongly in the midst of having an afflictive emotion. Mm. So then as we do the later points of the analysis, when you lose a sense of what you're looking for, come back to this step again and regenerate the sense of the ordinary kind of concrete appearance of the I when we're not analyzing. And you can use, in the past we've used other techniques like thinking of a time when you're falsely accused of doing something wrong or suddenly feel embarrassed or afraid. So you can also use those techniques. Then the second point of the analysis is recognizing that if the I, this person, the I that I grasp at, exists as it appears from its own side, then when I search for it, it should be findable. It should become clearer and clearer as I focus in on it. And especially it must exist in one of two ways, either as something that's one with the collection of my body and mind and all the parts of my body and mind, or something that's different from those. Because everything in the world exists, everything that exists is either one with, the collection of my body and mind or something different from them. Because that's true with regard to any one object. Like if you take, I don't know, a cup or a flower, then everything in the world is either one with that object or different from that object. There's no third possibility. So just try to, get clear about that reasoning for a minute or two. Mm. So this is called the full set of possibilities. That if the I exists as it appears, then it should be findable either as one with the collection of my body and mind or something separate from them, different from them. Mm. So then the third step is why the person and the aggregates, or the aggregates is the collection of our body and mind, right? Cannot be inherently the same. So here again, just briefly touch back to the first step to get clear about what it is you're looking for again. So think of a time when there's a sense of self arises very strongly in your heart. And look at how the I seems to appear in that time, in that moment. Mm. So then we check if that I is inherently one with my our aggregates, or one's own aggregates, which are the collection of all the parts of the body, all the parts of the mind, that entire collection of the parts of our body and mind. First of all, the I, it cannot be that it's one with those aggregates because all those parts of our body and mind belong to the I. They're parts of me, the person. And that I is the one that possesses and controls all those parts. or yeah, owns all those parts. All the parts of our mind, all the parts of our body are parts of the person. So how can they possibly be the same as the thing they're part of? Mm. Also, the person, as it appears in the first step, the object of negation, when that I appears, and so go back to the first step if you need to kind of recall how it appears, but it appears as just one single kind of homogeneous thing, one solid sort of concrete thing. Whereas our aggregates, the collection of body and mind, when we bring that, when we turn our attention to that, it appears like a group of parts, a group of things, of many things. So if the I was inherently one with the aggregates, it would be identical to them. And the way it appears to them, our own mind would have to be identical as well. So the I cannot be inherently one with the parts because the way it appears to our mind is completely different. The I or person appears as just one homogeneous thing. The aggregates or the collection of our body and mind appear as a group of things. Mm. And finally, the I, as it appeared in the first step, yeah, it cannot be the aggregates because the aggregates are many in number. When you think of the collection of parts of our body and mind, there's many parts. There are many aggregates. But the I is just one. So if it was inherently one with the aggregates, it would have to be many. Or the aggregates would have to be just one, because they would be identically the same thing. But it's not, the I is not many, and the aggregates are not just one. So therefore the I cannot be the same as the aggregates. So check if that makes sense, if that's convincing and seems true in your mind. And then, so finally try to conclude kind of clearly as strongly as you can. This is realistic or authentic, that the object of negation appearing in the first step, this I existing from its own side, cannot be one with the aggregates. It absolutely is not the same as my aggregates, the collection of body and mind. And so the only other possibility is that it must be something different from the aggregates, in which case we should be able to put, imagine, looking completely independently from, separate from our body and mind somewhere else. So we can imagine pushing our body and mind off to one side and then, looking as for something that's different from them, inherently different from them, existing independently, completely separate and unrelated to our body and mind. So is there an I, the object of negation from the first step? Is there something we can point to completely separate without reference to our body and mind at all? And point to and say, this is the I, this is the person. Mm. So being unable to find anything, then we have to conclude that since this I, which seemed to so concretely, solidly appear in the first step, it must either be one with the aggregates or different from them. There's no third possibility. It's not one with the aggregates. It's also not different from the aggregates. So therefore, the only logical conclusion is it absolutely does not exist. That I, existing in the way it appears, I have to conclude is absolutely false. It's a hallucination. It appears completely real, but actually is totally non-existent. Mm. So whatever way that makes sense to you, then try to immerse your awareness in that absence of that object of negation that appeared clearly in the first step. The emptiness of that. Mm. Okay, so gradually relax your attention. Mm. Yeah, we're sorry, it's all a bit quick now compared to last time we meditated on this in class. I think we had a lot more time somehow. But anyway, I hope that somewhat helpful. And also, I'm sorry I didn't leave any time for questions. So let's dedicate, and then if some of you have questions and want to stick around afterwards, I can answer. But for those who have to go, let's dedicate now. So there we go. Yeah. So rejoicing in all the merit we've created in this module. Yeah, it's been a real pleasure for me going through the, different aspects of emptiness with you all. So thank you all for your participation. So let's rejoice in our own efforts and the efforts of all the other participants in the course and all those supporting the course, especially the two SBCs, Leah here at LMB and Bay at Ocean of Compassion Center, and all those, who contribute to the existence of those centers and therefore of this course as well. And all the, countless sentient beings who are supportive of us, each individually or directly or indirectly. So think of all the merit, then gather together, then we can dedicate, with these verses. Due to this virtue, may I quickly become a Guru Buddha and lead all transmigratory beings without exception to that state. May the precious, blow it up a little bit. There you go. May the precious supreme bodhicitta, not yet born, arise. May that arisen not decline, but increase more and more. May the precious view of emptiness, not yet born, arise. May that arisen not decline, but increase more and more. By these merits may transmigratory beings attain the state of all-seeing, subdue the enemy of faults, and be freed from the ocean of samsara, disturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. I fully dedicate all these virtues to be able to train just like the hero Manjushri, who knows reality, and just like Samantabhadra as well. I fully dedicate all my roots of virtue with the dedication praised as the best by the all gone beyond victors, by all the gone beyond victors of the three times, in order to have good conduct. May the blind see forms, may the deaf hear sounds, may the naked find clothing. Uh, May the hungry find food, may the thirsty find water and delicious drinks. May the poor find wealth, those weak with sorrow find joy. May the forlorn find hope, constant happiness, and prosperity. May all who are sick and ill quickly be freed from their ailments, and may every disease in the world never occur again. May the frightened cease to be afraid, and those bound be freed. May the powerless find power, and may people think of benefiting one another. May no living creature ever suffer, commit evil, or ever fall ill. May no one be afraid or belittled, or their minds ever be depressed. Even those who encounter me, a faithful or an angry thought arises. May that eternally become the source for fulfilling all their wishes. May all those who say bad things to me or cause me any other harm, and those who mock and insult me, have the fortune to fully awaken. May I be the doctor and the medicine, and may I be the nurse for all sick beings in the world until everyone is healed. May a rain of food and drink descend to clear away the pain of thirst and hunger, and during the eon of famine, may I myself change into food and drink. May I become an inexhaustible treasure for those who are poor and destitute. May I turn all things they could need, and may I turn into all things they could need, and may these be placed close beside them. May I be a protector for those without one, a guide for all travelers on the way. May I be a bridge, a boat, and a ship for all who wish to cross the ocean. May I be an island for those who seek one, and a lamp for those desiring light. May I be a bed for all who wish to rest, and a servant for all who want a servant. And until they pass away from pain, may I also be the source of life for all the realms of varied beings that reach into the ends of space. Just like space and the great elements such as earth, may I always support the life of all the boundless creatures for as long as space remains and for as long as sentient beings remain. Until then, may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. Then also for the long and stable life of His Holiness the Dalai Lama and all of our other spiritual teachers, and for the swift return of the perfect reincarnation of Kebje Lama Zopa Rinpoche, who again shows um, the perfect practice of a bodhisattva and upholding and fulfilling the upholding the Buddha Dharma and fulfilling the welfare of sentient beings even more extensively than before. And then bring to mind any other prayers or dedications you yourself would like to make. Mm. So may all those auspicious, virtuous prayers be accomplished in accordance with your wishes, and then especially for the two centers that are supported this Buddhism, Discovering Buddhism course, Land of Medicine Buddha and Ocean of Compassion. May the centers be free from any obstacles and have all the staff and supporters and volunteers and students all participate in harmoniously with one another to engage in Dharma, bring about benefit for themselves and countless others. And may the activities of the centers have every supportive condition, especially staff, volunteers, financial support, um, yeah, and every other kind of support in their activities to benefit beings grow more and more. Yeah, I think that's all. So yeah, thank you all. See you next time. Again, if any of you have questions or something, I can stick around for a bit. But otherwise, we can also just go.
Thank you, Geshe.
Thank you, Asha. Okay, Ladan, you have any questions? Okay.
Thank you, Geshe. I have
Okay.
I have questions, but
Okay. And Bay, yes, you can
I
ask also. Go ahead, Ladan.
yeah. Um, well, about all the like emptiness, it is I feel that is the basic of all like teaching, and when you somehow feel it or see it, it's like changes every karma that you had made. Every is it true?
Uh, is it true? Like it changes every karma you've made?
Like it's purified. It's there's no more karma because you have found the essential things that is emptiness. Because like,
Well, I mean, realizing emptiness, it doesn't make karma disappear. Like past karma we've created, the seeds of karma are still there, right? Although, like when we generate, the more wisdom realizing emptiness we generate, it's a powerful antidote that weakens those seeds and gradually destroys them. But it doesn't happen just like instantly, right? It's a gradual process.
yes,
Um, but but that really only starts to happen when we have a non-conceptual direct perception of emptiness, right? And to have that, we have to have also very stable single point concentration.
yes,
Like it's nothing like just kind of when we do this sort of meditation like we ordinarily do. To
mhm,
have that degree of single pointed concentration is you can focus effortlessly on one single object for 4 hours or longer, right?
mhm,
And the body
mhm.
and mind are pervaded by a sense of bliss and pliancy. Means your body feels kind of light like cotton, and you have just incredible amount of mental focus. Um, so it only that kind of experience of emptiness that really becomes an antidote to afflictive emotions and their seeds only happens like once we have that degree of concentration. So it's quite high level
Mhm.
of realization. But
Realization. Yes.
already when we just meditate on emptiness like this, it does act as an antidote. to some
Mm.
degree. It is counteracting the force of karma we've created in the past. And it is, I mean, to whatever degree, I mean, we can see in our own experience, is it weakening our attachment to things? Is it weakening our kind of irritation and dislike of things? Do things become a bit more, I don't know,
Patient.
dreamlike or a bit lighter, less solid seeming?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So slowly, slowly. Thank you so much,
Hmm.
Geshe.
Sure. Yeah.
See you again. Thank you for your
Okay. See
teaching.
you again, Ladan. Yes.
Bye bye.
I'll look at, there's a question from Bay in the chat. How do you meditate on the sense that of I that possesses the karmic imprints of infinite past lives? Uh, yeah. I mean, that's always, when like we're meditating according to the Madhyamaka Prasangika, the consequentialist school view of emptiness. And that's always uh, kind of argument against their view by the other Buddhist schools, like the Sutra school or even the Madhyamaka Swatantrika school or the mind-only school, is that to say that they're negating too much. Because if the person only exists as something merely imputed upon the aggregates and is not findable, when you search for the person, that you cannot find anything to posit as the person from its own side, then the other schools will kind of complain. Well, then what is it that carries the seeds of karma from life to life, right? They would say, you're negating too much. Um, but yeah, so then it is important to consider, well, when we have this kind of view of emptiness, of the middle way consequentialist school, like what is it that carries the seeds of karma from life to life? Um, and they say that I mean, very much it's a deep, like dependent arising, that there is a person, like when we're meditating on emptiness, it's not like there's no one there doing the meditation, or just when we're having a conversation like now. Although, what even the conventional person, I mean, apart from the object of negation, even the the mere person that does exist is not findable anywhere within the aggregates or apart from the aggregates. It exists as something merely imputed upon the aggregates, but it has an existence, right? Um, and functions. Um, so the consequentialist middle way school says it's the karmic seeds are carried as part of the continuum of that mere I, the person that's merely imputed on the aggregates. Um, so how to meditate on that? Yeah. I think the way to meditate, Bay, is to consider like, well, what is it that continues from life to life? Like there's nothing solid, of course, there's nothing physical. There's a stream of consciousness that continues life to life. But even like when we say stream of consciousness, that's something imputed upon a series of mental events that are connected to one another, but each one is different from the ones before and the ones after, right? Um, and then the person is labeled upon the person that um, goes from life to life, of course, cannot be just the person imputed upon a body of like this life or one life, right? Because the body disappears. So it's really like the person that's imputed upon the stream of consciousness that goes from life to life. And the one imputing it mainly is us, right? Um, ourself. And part of that imputation is like just having a sense of I. And so one way to meditate on it is, well, yeah, how do I have that sense of I? A big reason, a big part of it is just because we experience our own mind and, sensations and so forth from the inside, not from the outside. And there's a continuity to that kind of internal experience that's unique to us. Nobody else has that. And so that's kind of also part of, but yeah, the question is, I mean, that we can reflect on and get a sense of that. What do we mean by this continuity of person that moves from life to life? Is, yeah, sort of how we continually and sort of habitually construct um, an identity of a person, right? That's unique from any other person. But it's also quite clear. It's a continually unfolding process, right? Anyway, does that give you some ideas, Bay? Or is that the answer? I mean, is that kind of answering your question? Not the answer, but part of.
Part of, yeah. The thing is, there's often we talk about karmic seeds or imprints. Um, there's, I think we don't talk much about how they are impermanent, right?
How they are permanent. Well, yeah, yeah. When we say seed, yeah, it's not like a plant seed, like it's nothing physical, but it's like an energy. You know,
Right.
it helps to think about it more like an energy. Mm, think about like sometimes people have on their office desk those like metal balls that
Mm,
hang, and you click one, and then it clicks the others,
yeah.
and they go back and forth. Like none of the balls aren't going through, but the energy is kind of moving through those balls, right? And then you know what
Hmm.
I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah. Or I mean, a wave on the ocean is a similar thing, right? But so we think when we create a karma, it's an action, right? There's some energy involved. Not so much the physical energy, but it's mainly the motivation and then action, whether it's an action of the mind or the body or speech. But we intentionally, deliberately engage in some action. And then Leah, I'm glad to see her nodding, Leah, because I don't want to take too much of your time. Yeah, Leah's here. Like she has to
Oops.
stay until
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
say,
It's overtime.
but
Sorry.
she says it's okay. But um, yeah. But so we engage in an action, right? And then there's a completion. We complete that action and then go on and do something else. So just by having engaged in that action, it's we've exerted some kind of energy, right? By engaging in that, and so that creates this kind of unit of energy whether we've engaged in that action with a virtuous intention or non-virtuous intention, and whether it's caused benefit or caused harm. Those are all aspects that determine what are the characteristics of that unit of energy, which we call a karmic seed, right? And then that energy, then it's like it has a potential to produce a certain kind of effect in the future. And here it's similar to a plant seed, but a plant seed is something very much physical, right? Whereas this karmic seed is not something physical. It's a non-associated compositional factor. It's not consciousness. It's also not physical, but it's a functioning thing, right?
Hmm.
It has an ability to perform a function, right? And actually, it does. It's continually performing a function. It's once it's created, the function it performs is just sustaining that energy through time, right? And that way it's like a wave moving through the ocean. And then when it meets certain conditions, it becomes like a wave that's crashing on the beach, right? And the
Hmm.
beach is like a condition. The conditions come together such that it transforms from just this kind of a dormant state, really, of just maintaining a continuum of its own kind of inertia to producing an effect. And
Hmm.
and then there's the four karmic effects, right? So
Hmm.
that's how you think of karmic seeds. It's also like each karmic seed has its own continuum, but they're within and connected with the continuum of the person, right? They're also part of the basis
Hmm.
of imputation of the person, actually.
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay,
Okay.
but we better stop there. I don't.
Yes. Thank you for sharing.
Okay, see you tomorrow for the medicine with the puja.
Thank you.
Mhm. Good night.